Okay then folks, the verdict is in. It doesn't matter whether you care so much about critics' opinions or whether you prefer actual gamers' views on the subject, but it seems the best Final Fantasy game to be released over the last 13 years is none other than Final Fantasy XIV itself, in particular with its latest Shadowbringers expansion. So this is a bit of a surprise to me. Don't get me wrong, I've been having quite a bit of fun with Final Fantasy XIV lately. As many of you know, I haven't yet got to experience the expansion, but the game, you know, as a whole is something I have been getting into. That said, you know, with some of the classics that have been re-released recently in terms of Final Fantasy IX, Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy XII, one thing I did not expect was that the highest rated game on the list for the last 13 years from the Final Fantasy franchise was going to be the MMO Final Fantasy XIV. But it is, regardless of how you measure, whether you use the critic scores, whether you use the user scores, the game that comes out on top in each case is Shadowbringers. So let's go ahead and see how this compares to some of the other games in the franchise. So I'm just going to share a few examples of perhaps some games in the franchise that you might have thought would have come on top of Final Fantasy XIV. If you want the complete in-depth list, then by all means head over to Metacritic yourself and compare any of the Final Fantasy games that have come out over the last 13 years, and you'll see that they have not done as well as Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. But Final Fantasy IX, always a firm favourite for many people. This is the re-release, of course, to keep it in that time scale of the last 13 years. Has a Metascore of 85. That's the average that's been given to it by all of the critics that have been counted, with a user score of 8.9. And to be honest, I expected this one to be a little bit higher than that, but there we go, 85, and 8.9 is pretty good actually. That's basically 9 out of 10, isn't it? So a nice user score, but the critics generally agree with the user score on this one. So let's head over now to Final Fantasy X. This is actually the 10 and the 10.2 HD remaster, since you'll probably remember these games came together as a particular bundle. And a little bit similar to what we just saw with Final Fantasy IX, we got an 85 on that in terms of the Metascore. For this we get an 84 and an 8.7 for the user score, so definitely rated highly by both critics and users, and of course an all-time classic from the PlayStation 2 era. And talking of PlayStation 2, let's head over to Final Fantasy XII. Slightly lower on the Metascore here. This is the Zodiac Age release, the PC version, but pretty much the same thing. If we head over to PS4, for example, we can see the score for that too, 86 and an 8.4 user score compared to 83 and an 8.7 user score for the PC version. Thought Final Fantasy XII would have been rated a little bit higher than this. Interestingly, actually, if you do go, and it's a little bit out of our range, but if you go back to the original PS2 version of Final Fantasy XII, the user score is quite a lot lower than what we're seeing here for the Zodiac Age. I do think this game has actually aged quite well. A lot of people seem to appreciate it now far more than when it was first released. Anyway, if we go over to Final Fantasy XV, we can see that the Metascore is 81, so a little bit lower than some of our other examples, and the user score is suffering a bit there, only at 7.6. So Final Fantasy XV for sure had its problems, which is why I'm guessing this user score is a little bit lower than perhaps we've seen on some of the other games. But if we head over now to the only Final Fantasy XIV, what do we see? Both the Metascore and the user score are into the 90s. The Metascore has a whopping 92, which is almost perfect, and the user score is 9.2. And to be honest, these scores are quite unusual for the Metacritic.com website. It is generally quite tough to get your product into these kind of high numbers, but people are loving this particular game. And as you can see as well, out of all of the examples that I've looked at here, Shadowbringers is the only one with this Metacritic must-play stamp on it. I believe that's because it's in the 90s and the others are in the 80s. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting into the Shadowbringers expansion myself. Haven't really had a chance to do so yet, plus I need to level up to I think it's level 70, is it? 70 to 80 Shadowbringers, and I think I'm level 62 or so, no, 60 at the moment, so I've got a bit of a ways to go. But I'm really excited to get into it. A lot of people are talking very, very positively about this game, as you can see here, in fact, but not just here, all over the internet. Some are saying it's by far the best Final Fantasy they've ever played, and even though it's an MMO, it generally is competing in these people's minds with the solo adventures of the main numbered entries in the series. That the story is phenomenal, etc, etc. So, like I say, looking forward to getting into it myself. If you guys haven't played Final Fantasy XIV before, then this might be a good opportunity to get into the game. And if you don't want to play through the content before Shadowbringers, you just want to get straight into the main expansion, then I think Square do sell various boosts and stuff, just so you can level up your character, complete the main scenario quests for the other parts of the game, and then get straight into the expansion, though that could be a little bit pricey. You might want to play through first. And if you don't want to spend any money on Final Fantasy XIV, normally it has a subscription fee, and you have to buy the game, of course, and the various expansions. There is actually a free trial you can play. I believe it's up to level 20 or level 30 or something, and you do not have to pay a cent in order to experience the content, just so you can see how you feel about the game. You don't need to buy the game for that. You don't need to pay a subscription fee. You can download the trial, play up to, I think, level 20, and then if you want to continue, you can go ahead and purchase and continue from where you left off. Anyway, guys, let me know what your thoughts are about this. Have you been playing Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers? If so, what do you think about it? Have you played in the past the game Final Fantasy XIV but took a break from it, and will this expansion be calling you back to your adventure? And please do, just let me know what you think of the game if you have played it down below. But thanks for stopping by. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget to support me by subscribing to the YouTube channel and leaving a like. That really does mean a lot to me, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.